Shut up and sit down.
Welcome back, everyone. This is episode 4 of the MXB Track Builder Helper series. We're going over this application I built to help you track builders on MX bikes. Last time we went over how to add your materials, how to import them from an existing file. Today we're going to start with looking at scenes. Now, what is a scene? Your scene is your 3D objects or a collection of them that you are going to place on your map, on your track. So let me explain a little bit. Where are you going to find these in the MX Bikes files? So these exist in the HMF and or your THT file. If you remember their HMF file, that is your file of the things that you see in your map. It's the HMF file is used to generate your map file, which again is the things that you can see. So as we see in the HMF, we come down here, we have scene 0, scene 1, up to scene 3 of different types of models, flagpoles, the standings tower, the finish gate. And just a note, on the example track, remember we're recreating the example track, there is no scenery.edf in that folder anywhere. So I don't know, it might just been an oversight from the devs. So I asked them about it. Haven't heard anything back. So if you happen to put a node like this in your file and that model does not exist, it won't cause an error. It'll just ignore it. So I think that's what's happening here. It's just ignoring that. So when we build our file, we're gonna remove that. We're not gonna add that one in. But as you can see, each one you can set the position and the rotation. For instance, like this one has a 90-degree rotation. So explain a little bit, what are these models? If you've gotten this far, you probably know a little bit about it, but what these models are, they're .edf files, but in order to create that, you're gonna get a model from a website somewhere, one of the pre-built assets, and it's going to probably be an FBX model or an OBJ, something like that. And you're going to use Blender or 3ds Max, Maya, one of your 3D applications to then export that as an FBX file, and then that's where you go down to our tools here. We have the FBX to EDF tool. That is the tool from PiBoSo to convert your FBX files to the EDF files that are needed for the game. I don't know exactly what's happening when he converts them to EDF. It's a proprietary format. Probably puts in some kind of locking on their encryption or something, just so you can't export these EDF. You can't rip them. Hopefully nobody's broken that, but that's I think that's the intent of the EDF file. I could be wrong, but I believe that's it. Anyways, you'd go through that, you would convert your FBX, and you would create your EDF files. So if we look over in the example track, there is a few of them. We have our standings tower, our finish gate, and our flagpoles. And I'm just going to copy those. We're just going to go ahead and copy those right away over to our models folder that is in our track that we're recreating. Again, they had them in the root, but in our project, we said all of our models are going to be in the models folder. So that's where we're putting them. Come back over here, and let's go back actually to our file. Again, we're skipping the scene 0, and we are going to look at adding the finish gate.edf with the position of 121, 1.75, and 131. So we just come over here, add a scene. We're going to select our model, which was the finish gate. And again, I think it was at 121 and 1.75 meters high. So in the Y is always in this game is the Y is your up and down altitude. And the Z position was 131. Now, I'm not going to exactly show you this. I'll show you a little bit in Blender. the reason we're setting the exact position on this object here is because this is one object where the origin is 0, 0, 0, and we're moving it manually to be in a specific place on our map. If you're using Blender, let's open up Blender, and this is the Krakenberg map. Your world origin is 0, 0, 0. So if we go down and we look, we have all these objects. All of these objects here, they're relative to that 0, 0, 0. When I export all of these objects as one scene, one FBX file from Blender, the origin is going to be 0, 0, 0, but these are going to be offset to where they're supposed to be on the map already. And in that case, that's where we would come back. We wouldn't set these to position. We would just leave them at 0, 0, 0. So if we come back here, we would export it. We'd create a scenery.edf, and then we would just leave everything to 0, 0, 0. And because it's all of our objects are offset from that, from our blend file and our FBX file, they would just be set automatically where you need it. So in most cases, when you're working from Blender, exporting your objects, you're just going to leave everything 0, 0, 0 and your rotation 0, 0, 0 because everything was set in Blender already. So you don't have to worry about it. Let's see. So that's, again, the reason why we're setting these is because these are individual objects that we have from PiBoSo's track. And you could do this the same way if you actually had models that you wanted to use on many different tracks and you wanted to work with the EDF file directly and change the position, you could. Again, I think it's much easier just work with the FBX in Blender, and then you're just going to export everything as a scene that way, unless you want to reuse things from PiBoSo like the finish gate or the standings tower, which come in kind of handy because they're kind of nice, but those can all be recreated yourself. Just got to know a few things on how to do that. We're not going to show you how to do that in this one. Let's see. Next, what we want to do is you're going to see these two options here. Again, when you're building a track, again, remember your HMF is what you can see, and your THT, that is your physics layer. Collisions, etc., all happen based on things. So if we look in this one, again, remember scenery doesn't exist, so we just got to kind of ignore it, but it's the only scene that exists in the THT file. So that means none of the other objects have collisions. If it's only in your HMF file, it's just going to be like that, and you're only going to see it on your map. You're not going to be able to collide with it. And also another thing is, in order for collisions to happen on your objects in Blender, they have to be named a certain way. So let's pop up Blender and let's look at so this is one of my, if you look over here, that is a wall concrete rock. So that rock has collisions because it's a wall type object. And your objects have to be named a certain way. You can look at the documentation, the track building documentation from PiBoSo, to see what the valid ones are, but your object has to be named that certain way. So when you export it and you convert it to EDF, then if you add your scene with that object that's named that certain way to your THT, again, that's your collisions file, your physics file, it will then in game have the collisions on it. If you don't add it to your THT file and you just had it in your HMF file, you could still see it, but there wouldn't be collisions until you added it. And again, remember, you have to name them with those certain names and add it to the THT file for it to have collisions. If it's not named it, you can still put it in your THT file and you won't have collisions because it's not named correctly. So again, you could just put it in here if you wanted to. It would add it to that THT file, but again, it wouldn't have collisions. So, and I don't know if there's any benefit to or any performance hits by including it in both. If you don't have them, it might just be part of the build process that if it sees something in the THT but it's not named correctly, it's probably just ignoring it. But if you can, what am I trying to say? If you can put your objects or your scenes with some logic into them, you know, to only visible ones, add them to one scene file, and all the ones that have collisions, you could then include it in both, or vice versa. I have scenes where I have my trees, custom like just cylinders for my tree objects, and I only include them in my THT file because there's nothing visible about them. They're just in the same place as my trees, but they're invisible, and they're just in my THT file. Okay, so that long-winded explanation of what that is. Again, I'm just going to demonstrate how to get the rest of these in. So let's add another one. And what did we need to add? We need to add the finish gate. So let's go ahead and add the finish gate. That was, I'm sorry, we already did the finish gate. We want the standings tower. And that one is 158. $158.0, 136 with a rotation on the Y of 90 vertical. Add one more, and that was the flagpoles. And also forgot we're going to include that. We're not including them in the THT because, again, none of these objects have collisions. I checked, and they're not in the THT of the example track, so we're just going to ignore that setting for now. And that one had no rotation as well. So that's it. Let's go ahead and build everything. And we're going to reload our, so this side is ours. And if we come down, we look a little offset, but our scene 0 is the finish gate, and it's in our models folder. It's got the same settings. And that is it. I think everything is set good. Standings and the flagpole, the 90 rotation. All right, we're good on that. So now, in order to test, let's open map view. All right, so we'll open up our map that we just built. And there is our standings tower. There's the flagpoles, and there is our finish gate. So that is how you set the scenes for your track. Again, that's just getting them in, actually making them all, setting them up in Blender. That's a topic for another video. All right, and as you noticed, we also have an import from file. Let's go ahead and do that. We are going to actually import from the example track. And you can import from the THT or the HMF, and it should do everything correctly. Now let me cancel this first. Let's go ahead and remove these. Sure, it will import them correctly. All right, let's do our HMF first. Right, scenes were imported, and again, remember, scenery.edf is a bad one. We'll end up removing that, but it went ahead and set everything as needed. And then when I import this file from the THT, this is just to demonstrate, it's going to try to match up. So if it finds the same model that it had already imported from the HMF, it'll just simply set the switch on it to include it in the THT. So we should see that happen on scene 0. And yep, it added that. And like we said, though, we don't need that. So we're just going to remove that. All right. That is it for scenes. All right. Next, we are going to talk about surface areas. So there are 3 types of surface areas that you can add to your track. These have various purposes. I won't be able to explain everything totally, but let's just go through them. All that they are is, let me just add our off track area. Let me show you that. And so what happens in your THT, go to the example track one, we will see that it will get written over here to these surface layers. So we have our off, pits, and start. From what I've gathered and what I know works is for the off track, it's a mask. It's just an image. It's a mask. You're going to mask out all of the areas that are not on your track. And I think TFC demonstrates this in his tutorial videos. But in conjunction with this mask and your checkpoints and your center line and some other things, the min and max lines that are created in the track editor tool from PiBoSo, it will help with your long resets. Your long resets will then set you to the edge of the track. And again, that's created from the track editor tool in conjunction with the surface layer. So you need this surface layer built into your map. Then when you open up in track ed, and you can do the whole min max lines thing. And again, so when your long resets happen, it'll reset the bikes to the edge of the track instead of the center of the middle of your track on the center line. That'll help with, hopefully, with collisions and other things like that when people are coming by. But anyways, all that we will do is we select our mask. I had already copied it from the example track into ours. So we will just take the area off, and that's pretty much it. We just add the pit area, select the pits. Now when the pit surface layer, what that will do is, like, if you're anywhere in the mask that you created for your pit area, if you would do a long reset in the pits, it'll respawn you directly back to your pit box, or your location where you were initially spawned in the pits, to your pit position. Now the start area, this is an interesting one that I can't figure out what it's for. It's in the example track. It looks like a mask on the start. It says in the documentation for the starting grid area. I messed around. I tried to test it to see what it did. It didn't respawn me back to the starting gate. It would always respawn me back to the pits. So I sent the email to, or I asked somebody in Discord what it's for. So hopefully they'll get back to me and I can let you guys know. But as far as I know, right now it's not working as I would expect it to. So no idea on that one, but we're just using it because it was in the example track. And again, I'm not going to import them, but you can import them from the file, and that will take it from your, you will load it from your, it'll be removed if we continue. So we can just go through it. So we just hit OK, go over to our sample track. We're going to take the THT, and there we go. It imported them again, and that's all it did. So again, if you had an existing one, you could just do that, but it's pretty simple. There's only 3 of them anyways. And if you want to remove one, for instance, I didn't even use the pits or the start area on my track. You could just remove those and it doesn't matter. You don't even need this one. But again, if you're making a track, it's really nice to have it. So in conjunction with the things you can do in track ed to make it so you respawn to the edge of the track and not onto your center line on the long resets. And that's about it for surface areas. There's not much to show here. It's just going to be built into your TRH file. And again, like I said, it's then available for use in track editor. All right, now we are moving on to lighting and shadows. Now, this is this top section with your lighting. This is used in a couple of different files. So let's open up our track. Now, when you first set up and you wrote your project files, it created 2 INI files here: params no shadows and params with shadows. And let's open up those just to see what it looks like. So as we can see, this has your light direction in here. So this is used when you're building the track, building your map. these are the light directions that are used for your shadows. So again, it doesn't really matter if you have build with shadows off, like I do right here. But once you flick that on, that's going to then determine which one of these files are used, either the shadows or the no shadows one. So with this set to on, it's going to use the parameters with shadows when it's building your track. So all of your objects will then cast shadows and it'll build it into your map. I'm going to take that off. So again, the light direction is used for that, and all of these settings for your shadows, creating the shadow volumes and creating the shadow maps. Okay, so I'm not an expert on, 3D shadows or anything, but from what I experimented with is when the shadow volumes. So let's say you have a tree and that's casting a shadow on the ground. There's also the shadow, I want to say it's in the air from where the tree is to the ground. So when you ride your bike through that area, it's actually going to cast a shadow on your bike as well and the rider model. So if you turn this off, you could actually ride through that shadow and nothing would change on your bike. You wouldn't see the shadow affecting that. Almost all cases, you're just going to leave that on anyways. The super sampling is, I don't know exactly what that is. It's just a technique for these shadow volumes. Again, 1 is off, 4 is max. And then the shadow maps themselves, those are the ones that are displayed, the actual shadow itself on the ground, and what is shown there. Again, in your scale. And let's see, the super sampling again, that's just another technique that PiBoSo is using for it. And then we have the shadow maps terrain cast. I leave that off by default because if you have a very large map, this could add hours to your build. Even on a small one, it might take more time. So what this is going to do, so if you have ridges or berms, ruts, based on your lighting direction, it's gonna cast shadows from the track itself. So your berm could then be casting a shadow. You'll see some funky shadows on a few tracks. If you look, some of them don't look realistic. The terrain casting. So you might want to experiment with that one. Make sure it looks good on your track before you use it. I wish there was a better shadow system in this game. I wish there was real-time shadows for one. Adding all these shadows, it bakes them directly into your map. So right now, this engine, there is no way for it to have a day-night cycle, or the sun can't move because your shadows can't move because they're baked in with this original position from your light direction. So unfortunately, we're never going to have a sun that'll be able to move or any type of day-night cycle in this game the way it is now. So again, I mentioned this light direction is used in those 2 parameter files. This light direction is also used in what is called the AMB file. So if we come over to our build folder, this AMB file, I'm just going to call it the ambient, because AMB, I believe that's probably what PiBoSo meant by it. So let's look at that. And so if we look at it, it just is literally sending the sun position here. Don't worry about this stuff. We're going to get to that. But the sun position is set in there. And this is the real-time sun position when you're actually riding in the game. That's the sun position. So you kind of got to, when you're looking at the sun position, you're also going to have to rotate your sky dome, which we'll get into later, to kind of match where your sun position is. Because the default sky domes, the sun is in a certain position. It wouldn't make sense to keep that sun there, and then your sun position is actually shining from a different way. So just keep that in mind. But that is put there again in your AMB file and also in your parameters file for the build. So again, you don't have to do that manually. It's all done for you by this app. And man, that's about all that I think we are going to show in this video. I think we can hit the other ones, background skies, dirt and graphics effects, sounds, track info in the last video of this series, and one more. I think we're almost there. And again, that's it. Not much to show you on these guys as far as the track, because all we did was add the scene and our surface areas. And that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Hit the like button. Leave me some comments. Let me know if you have any questions. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And I will catch you on the next one. Thanks a lot, guys.